Deputy Speaker, there are occasions in the government's life when a particular budget epitomises everything that they stand for and what their priorities are. We saw such a budget in 2014 when those opposite were first elected to government under the former Prime Minister Abbott, and we well remember the legacy of that budget. And so we should, because so much of it still exists in the budget we're confronted with in these appropriation bills today. The budget had at its heart unfairness, and it did not pass the test not only of this parliament but of the general public's opinion of what it was trying to do. This budget is exactly the same. Boldly on display are the priorities of this government. Deputy Speaker, I'm sure people will excuse me for borrowing the analogy of the member for Gilmore last week. You can change the jockey on the horse, and the member for Gilmore might be surprised to know that most members of the public probably consider, if the horse is the government, the jockey would be considered to be the Prime Minister, not herself. You can change the jockey on that horse, but if that horse is running the same race, you're not going to have any different outcome. And that's exactly what is happening with this budget that is before us now. The priorities, the wrong values, the wrong approach to the challenges facing the nation that were encapsulated in that very unfair, discredited 2014 budget are still there in all their tarnished glory in the budget that was announced this month by the Prime Minister. It is both sneaky and unfair, and I want to just address some of the most significant concerns that I have with the budget. The first thing that it puts in headlights before the Australian people is the fact that the government is committed to an $80 billion tax cut for the big end of town. That is their immovable priority. That is what they are determined to have encapsulated in this budget as reflecting their values and their priorities. And I would suggest that that is not shared by the vast majority of the Australian population, particularly when you consider that within that $80 billion is $17 billion that will go to the big banks, who have hardly covered themselves in glory in recent expositions coming out of the Royal Commission. It's particularly important if you look at that $17 billion that the big banks will get as a tax cut under the priorities of this government. That's enough, exactly enough, to put back on the table the $17 billion that this government has cut from our schools. So here you have a contrast between those of us on this side of the House who believe in investing in the things that make us a fairer, more dynamic country for the future that includes an opportunity for our children to be a part of that story, and the priorities of those on the other side of the House, which seems to be that big banks who have been exposed to not exactly exemplary behaviour, who also, I have to say, making record profits, they desperately need $17 billion in tax cuts. But our kids in our schools, who actually need, as my colleague, the member for Whitlam, has outlined to this House, the investment in their schools because they're working away in demandable classrooms across my region. They're needing investment in literacy and numeracy programs, work to be done in programs that ensure that young people in high school are well positioned for TAFE and university study when they leave their school. All the programs that I've seen across my electorate, and I know are happening across electorates around the country, were built on the back of the original Gonski Agreement, which was needs-based and sector-blind funding. This government has rolled up a shonky version of that, which is not needs-based and sector-blind, which cuts $17 billion from schools across the nation, and try to claim that they're actually doing the right thing by kids in our schools. Well, I don't think parents of those children, their families, their carers, the communities they live in, the teachers who spend so much time and energy working to make sure they position them well, I don't think any of those people will agree that that is a reasonable priority for a government to have. And certainly, I know in my electorate, many people would share that concern. Deputy Speaker, there are so many issues in this budget that I want to cover, and I'll take the opportunity to cover them in a number of contributions to the chamber. But like many of my colleagues, I'm very excited to hear my new colleague's first speech, so I'm only going to take a few minutes just to— please don't apologise, I'm absolutely thrilled to have this dilemma. So I just want to make a few points about what my concerns are in particular. One I've already spoken to the House about is the pea and thimble trick that's been played in the aged care sector. I've had many locals, indeed in tears, on the phone to me about access to home care package places. There's 105,000 people across the country waiting for a home care package. We got 14,000 in the budget. That's not going to even keep up with increasing demand. That's not even going to manage the demand that grew in the last 6 months since they last tried to do something to address this problem. And those families are under great stress and are waiting up to 12 months. Somebody who's been assessed as needing support in their home is waiting 12 months. What does the government think families are doing in the meantime? This is an enormous pressure, and this is a particularly cruel trick. Not to mention the fact also, as our Shadow Minister has highlighted, they didn't actually put extra money in. They funded that by taking money out of residential aged care, which is also under a lot of pressure. The second area that I'm really angry about, and I'm very disappointed that the Prime Minister not only made an incorrect claim about the level of vet fee help debt under the Labor government when they took control, but also failed to even engage and talk about TAFE. And I think the government's record on vocational education, on skills, on providing apprenticeships, on filling that skill shortage, which should be addressed by training our own people, have been cutting away at the heart of vocational education. Every single budget and mid-year economic statement, not a single one has passed where they have not missed the opportunity to make another cut, and again they tout their Skilling Australia Fund, which they can't actually show has delivered anything in terms of apprentices. So there's so much that's wrong. There's so much that goes to the heart of a priority for a government that is completely out of whack of where the community is, what their needs are and what we should be doing as a nation. This budget, as I said at the beginning, puts their priorities up in headlights. And I tell you what, if they were my priorities over my head, I'd be ducking for cover, and I think many of those opposites should be doing the same. You can't prioritise $80 billion to big business, $17 billion to the banks, cutting away at the heart of school, at TAFE, at universities, at making sure that we have the investments that we need. I'll continue to fight, as I know all my colleagues on this side will, against what is a very unfair and poor budget decisions by this government. I thank the Speaker.
I call the member.